Last week we moved this door opening over, we did some electrical work, and we got this drywall on. Now we need to take care of the other side. Hi everybody, I'm Jim Dirdorf and this is Detroit DIY. Let's take a look at what we got going on. So the area beyond this wall is a mud room slash laundry room entryway to the house. From the back side or the road. This is the main entryway, and we have to take care of everything on this side of the wall now that we moved the door opening. The biggest issue that I have going is this probably used to be a window in here before I framed all this in last week, and you can kind of see the bottom of it there and where it went up, and then the top of it across there. What they did in the past is they put T111 siding on the house. When they closed this in, they left the T111 siding and they just put the paneling over the top of it. But to make matters even worse, they put the T111 siding over the existing lap siding that was originally on the house, probably from when it was built. So what we have here is about 1.75 inches, maybe 1.5 inches if you squeeze it together, of material that we have to get through. Not the worst thing in the world. I'll pull the paneling off of the T111 and then I'll pull the T111 off of the lap siding and then the lap siding off. The problem that I have is that T111 siding goes above the drywall on the ceiling, so I have to pull that little crown trim off right there and cut all that T111 siding so that I don't tear up this ceiling. Ceiling's probably the best drywall work in this whole house. So my goal is to remove all this paneling and drywall it. That's not going to happen now. I don't care if I have to put a little piece of corner trim right there for, you know, a few months or whatever until I get over, because I'm probably going to build an entire, like a pantry in here, or, you know, somewhere to put clean sheets and clean towels and just clean laundry in general for bedding and stuff like that, and then leave this closet kind of sort of the way it is for the vacuum cleaner, brooms. It's got a little shelf up there with some paint and stuff like that. Maybe bifold doors, I'm not sure. Maybe just make this look like a cabinet, whatever. Not really part of this video. So the first thing I want to do is get this crown molding off and then attempt to get the paneling off. And I'm not going to move the washer and the dryer currently or take that cabinet down just yet, but I am going to get that stuff and try to get it, you know, maybe to up here before I have to move all this stuff out of the way. So let's start getting some stuff pulled off. And just using my multi-tool. It's a painter's tool, 6-in-1, whatever, 8-in-1. They're one of my favorite tools for getting trim off without tearing anything up. And the nice thing is that if you use, even if you're using this and you have like a flat bar like this, you can put this on your drywall and put your flat bar up under it and pry it onto this instead of your drywall and not damage your drywall. And you can see some of that in my I have some trim tutorials. I'll put the playlist at the end of this video, and there's a lot of tips in there for doing trim. In this case, we're not worried about hurting anything here, since this won't even be going back up. Alright, I'm going to get this out of my way and then we'll start pulling this paneling down. So I can see right here that the paneling is maybe slightly above the top of this drywall. So if I pry it from the bottom, I should be able to get this out. I got a trim nail here that stayed behind, and without damaging the drywall. Let's see what we get here, because this is different. They shimmed this out more. Because the lap siding isn't here, and somehow they kept this flat, so they did some shim work to kind of make it the same as the lap siding. And there's our T111 right there. So I'm going to keep pulling this paneling off, at least until I get down there, and then we'll start working on this T111. So what I've discovered here is T111 siding, and they just built the wall right up against it. I don't see the lap siding underneath of it right here, so I don't know. This has to be running a little bit crooked and just not really super visible to the eye. So I have to go through and I have to cut all of this. I'm going to have to do it over on the other wall too, I'm sure, and up top, because like I say, I'm not going to rip the ceiling out. This goes all the way up through to the peak of the roof, so there's a lot of T111 that doesn't need to be ripped off. My tool of choice is going to be my Oscillating multi-tool. Yes, I might go through a few blades, but I can buy these blades cheaper. I have a Dremel flush cut saw. The blade for that is horrible. Like, you go, and it's 30 bucks. You go like 3 feet and the smoke is just rolling, and yeah, you just can't 4 or 5 feet and the blade's done. It's time for a new blade. I would spend $120 or $150 on blades just to cut this out, where in here I can do it for 50 bucks. So at any rate, I'm going to cut this out. There's about 1.5 feet in just a couple minutes, so this shouldn't take super long, but it's going to take a little bit. So I'm going to keep cutting and we'll come back and take a look. Alright, I've got about half of it cut. The blade is still cutting beautiful, which is nice. And I'm kind of surprised, so I'm going to tell you here, I got these blades from Harbor Freight. It's a Hercules, and it is for wood. It's a bimetal tooth blade made for plunge cutting, and man, is it holding up. I'm kind of shocked how well it's holding up for, you know, this was a $10 blade. I've got one that's supposed to last 3 times longer that I haven't broke out yet, that is carbide. It was a $14 blade. So hey, I'm pretty happy with these blades. But some of the T111 was just falling off as I was going across the top. I'll show you right here in a second. But we are ready to go ahead and get this piece pried off. And how I was saying, there's no lap siding here, but there is a 1/2 inch or so piece of material attached to this stud right here to shim everything out a little bit to keep everything squared up, I guess. So anyway, let's get this off. it is hitting the ceiling, so I'm not going to force the top. I'll work at the bottom and then see if I can't pull it out some. And I do see some siding back there. And I think the cracking we're hearing is I didn't get cut completely through it in some places. Alright, there we go. Just that easy. Now let's take a look at, I have to cut through all this lap siding now, so this is just half of what I have to cut through. I got the tar paper off, and you can see here they just put a piece of 3/4 inch material over the stud right there and butted it up against the siding that they left behind. The siding also runs across the top, and then of course all that we already know is there. So I need to once again take the multi-tool and cut all that siding so that I can shim this out the way that it truly needs to be, which is I'm going to put 1¼ 2x4s on here. We'll get to that when the time comes, but right now I'm just going to keep doing the same thing I was. Take that multi-tool and just start cutting all this siding out of here. Pry that board off right there. As you can see, that's just a 3/4 inch board nailed onto the studs. Get that out of the way, get the rest of that siding out of there, then we'll be one step closer. I've got all the siding pulled off here and across the top all the way over to there. Now I'm working on this bottom section, and what they did was apparently they put tar paper, then they put some flashing down there, this aluminum flashing. I'm actually able to score it with the razor knife and get it to break off below the floor. That's all I need. They must have put the T111 on over the top of that after they poured this slab. There is a bit of a gap down there, as you can kind of see. The siding goes down beyond the floor, which I won't be able to get that out, but I am going to take the time to seal that with something. I'm not exactly sure what yet, but I'll fill you on that when I get there. And so I just have this little bit more to do here, then get that siding there out of my way so that the drywall will come in its place. Then I'll move the washer and the dryer, take that cabinet down, and get started on that side. The flashing rips pretty easy where I scored it, but of course the nails stop you right in your tracks. Alright, now I'm going to do the same thing down here. Just get out my multi-tool and start cutting this siding out. I have the washer and the dryer pulled out of the way. I've pulled the cabinet down. I still have some electrical stuff to deal with. I have to take care of that 220 outlet down there, at least get it off the wall and put some wire nuts on the wires, because that is still live. and I still want it there just in case we ever go back to an electric dryer. I want to have that option, so I'm not going to omit that. Then of course my outlet, but everything else is pretty much ready to go here. I don't know, I have where that propane line or gas line sticks out of the baseboard. I have to cut around that somehow to get the baseboard off, so I'm going to work on that now, and then pull the paneling off just like the rest, and then we'll come back and take a look once I get the paneling off. I've cut a small piece out at the top because it was binding up, but we just have a small section here that I'm going to pull out right now, and they've already cut a groove in here to run wires through before they put the paneling on. Kind of a little bit of a janky deal, but that's what they did. I think a lot of what I'm seeing here is a little bit of a janky deal, but there's an electrical box down here that is literally nailed in between the two pieces of siding. Alright, there it is. I think with this, I am going to call it a night, and hit it tomorrow and try and get the rest of this cut out of here and just get everything ready for the drywall to go in, or for my studs to go on my shims. I did caulk down here on the floor, and I selected a caulk called Big Stretch, and hopefully it stays there just fine. It says you can put it in up to a 1/2 inch. That's close to what that was, that gap I had down there. So I filled it all in. Used 2 tubes down there. I'm probably going to need 2 more tubes to finish up once I get all this off. But that may be next time I'm here thing. I'm about 5 hours into my day now, and I've just been ripping stuff off. I found a big huge nest down here that was just full of turds and stunk and was nasty. I have to block off a hole in the pipe. I've since pretty much secured the crawl space a couple years ago, so I don't think there's much of anything living in the crawl space now, but irregardless, I'm not going to leave these big gaps open where they drilled for this pipe. I don't understand why there's a washer drain pipe here and it's not being used. I'm not really getting that, and why we have this one outside of the wall instead of using that one, so I would have to climb under the house. There is little to no room in this area right here to get to anything, so somebody may have been rambunctious and run that pipe down there and then went down to hook it up and realized that they just weren't fitting, and they opted to do it this way. I'm not sure. But I am going to pull this insulation out. It doesn't need to be here. This is no longer an exterior wall. Not only that, some of it's nasty. And then I have this last little bit of siding to cut off, and then the bottom to clean up. And the bottom's a little bit of a pain because I've got the propane line and I've got this pipe in my way, which I could cut it off if I wanted to and re-glue it, but I doubt I'm going to do that. So anyway, it's just all oscillating multi-saw work, nothing really exciting. So I'm just going to keep cutting this out and get it all cleaned up and ready to go for getting these studs shimmed out. I've got everything pulled off the walls that I need to get pulled off. It was a whopping 6.5 hours to get that done. Get it tidied up nice, everything's cleaned up nice there. I have found a wiring nightmare, a little bit of a code violation going on down here. I'll have to tidy that up. The dryer, that's the dryer wire right there, the 220 going to the dryer, that just stubbed through a hole in the wall and was wired into the plug itself, so that was actually wired correctly. There was a big gaps around these pipes down here, and in case you don't know, number 4 or number 5 steel wool is what you want to fill those gaps with. The critters had been coming up through there, living in this area here, then they were able to go through there because there's a gap. I'm not sure why. There's some real cheesy stuff that has taken place here, and that the other side of that is the bathroom and the bathroom closet. Probably one of the better finished rooms in the house in all reality. And then to find this hodgepodgery out here, which is, it's not the end of the world. I'm certainly not going to tear the whole bathroom apart to try and fix it. I may put another 2x4 in, especially since they sliced the entire side out of this one to put in. That's the medicine cabinet in the bathroom. So I might put another 2x4 up against that one and then just notch it out for each one of these 2x4s, tuck it in there nice and tight, and get some strength back in there. They did put a 2x4 in this direction that's, I guess, adding some support for the bathroom. A little bit of hodgepodgery, but I'll tighten it up and it'll be all good. I might even put 2 2x4s in there and get one more down through the center for the drywall, just so that the drywall is better secured. At any rate, my time this week has come to an end, so we'll be back next week and knock some more out. That week flew by. We're back here, we're working on this again, and the first thing I need to do is tidy up this electrical. I cannot completely tidy it up until I get my shims on these 2x4s. I have cut a notch up there for the wires to set in, and then I've drilled a hole right there for the wire to go through, that's currently hanging right next to the washer hookup. And then I have junction boxes for all of this stuff down here. So what I did was I bought some 2x6s and I ripped them down to 1¼ inches, and that is going to give me the exact thickness that I need, and I was able to get 4 of them out of each one. So unfortunately I need to get some of these on so that I can get my electrical boxes mounted down here and get everything tidied up. And to do that, of course, I have to have the breaker off, and there's no sunshine today, so it's going to be a little bit dark in here and a little difficult to record what's going on. But at any rate, I'm going to take that big number 10 wire right there, and I'm going to bring it through that notch that I cut in the 2x4 up there, and then down the other side of the 2x4 where I'll put the box down here somewhere, to get that taped up, spliced, taken care of, and get all that in a box. I'm hopeful there's enough wire. I'm not sure. Where they came through the sill plate, I will not be able to do anything with that, unfortunately. Well, they didn't come through the sill plate, they came through the rim joist. So I'm going to just kind of push that a little tighter to the wall, and then I will drill a hole through that stud right there to bring it over and into the box. So I'm really hopeful there's enough wire. I think there is. I do have a little bit of number 10 because this is just a pigtail to the dryer plug, so I should have enough. I haven't cut it loose yet to make sure of that, but I should have enough to get it in the box and get it all tidied up. So I'm going to get going with that, and then we'll come back and take a look here. And after I'm going to get the shims on these two studs here, this one and that one, and then across the top up here and across the bottom, and then we'll come back and we'll get some of these shims on. I've got my electrical all squared away, and I put this junction box right here for the 220, and I also put this extension on it because I had three number 10s to get in there, one to the plug and then to tie these two together, which is a whole nother video in itself because they did something crazy here. I'll explain it in a different video when we fix it. And then I've got my box mounted here, and all my wires are tidied up, stapled, everything's looking good. I cut the notch out right there and then just put my shim over the top of it, and then the same thing right there to bring it down this side. Got it all stapled into place, everything looking good. When you put these staples in, you do not want them binding or pinching the wire. They're just to hold the wire against the stud. You don't want to smash the staple into the wire. I've also bent these nails over and made sure that the wire was clear of it so that we don't have any issues there. So I am now ready to get the rest of these shims on and get this ready for drywall. I still have one more wire to figure out down here, but I think you can see it laying on the floor there. It goes back behind. I think it's just behind that baseboard, and there used to be electric heat right down here on the wall, and that wire was for the thermostat that was located, I don't know, in this area somewhere. So that wire is no longer needed, but it was just tied over to there, so I think I can pull that baseboard off. I'm going to be redoing this wall in drywall also, but not right now. At least I'm going to get all this drywall on, get everything tidied up here, and then I'm going to go to that wall. So that way we have the washer and the dryer, because our Airbnb is right there, and we do all of our laundry for the Airbnb right here. So luckily we're a little slow. We have some people checking in a little bit today, but winter time is a little more slow for us, so it gives me the opportunity to be able to do this. To secure these shims, I'm using some 2.5-inch screws. So like I say, these are 1.25 inches thick, so just gonna pull it up here, get it lined up nice. Oops, I went too high with the screw. Alright, now it's just a matter of a whole bunch more screws. So I'm going to get the rest of these on, take care of that wire down there, and then we are going to hang some drywall. I've got my drywall all marked out, and this is for my washer hookup. Then I have an outlet down here and the dryer outlet down there. I'm going to use my oscillating multi-tool to cut these out. Goes pretty quick. When you wear your blades out on wood, whatever, don't throw them away, because they still cut through drywall like butter, and they'll make this very easy. take my razor knife, clean those edges up just a little bit, and we'll be good to go. I'm going to go ahead and get these others cut out, and then we will get this bad boy put on the wall. I've got this piece of drywall in place. This one was a bugger. I've got the gas line sticking out down here, so I had to cut a little extra off the top so I could lean it out. Might have been better off just cutting this washer drain off and then gluing it back on when I was done. But that's not bad. I'll bust you guys off the tripod in a minute and show you what we got as far as that's concerned. 20-minute mud can take care of that. Fill that gap and then tape it up, and there's no problem. But otherwise, it's sitting in here really nice. It was just a pain to get in here. So as you can see, that gas line sticking out down there, I just notched the drywall out down there for it to fit through. And then I'll get a little creative when I put the trim on as to how I close that up a little better. It's not like it's a highly visible thing, so I'm not super worried about it. I marked everything out, so this is where I put a backer in to mount this tube to the wall, so I can get some good screws in there and hold that tight to the wall. My cutouts turned out very nice. We might be, somehow I thought this was crooked when I cut it, but it's a little bit crooked. So I'll have to see if the cover plate's going to cover that, or do I need to fill that in a little bit. No big deal. Either way, same thing here. I got a little bit fat right here, but everything fit in there okay. And there is my gap across the top. Now the rest of these will not have a gap that big because I won't need to be able to lift them up more. You can kind of see my marks on the ceiling there where the drywall, that's how far I had to bow it out to get it over that gas line. So I'm going to go ahead and get some screws in here. I've pre-marked everything, all my studs with these little dashes. Anywhere where there's a wire or somewhere I don't want to put a screw, I pre-mark it. If this was a regular construction job, that would get a steel plate over it. However, I'm doing all this myself, so I'm not concerned with it. And I do have another pass through of a wire down here, but it's back in far enough where a screw will never get it. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to use 1 5/8 inch drywall screws and get this thing tightened to the wall. I've got some 20-minute mud mixed up to pre-fill these gaps I have at the top. I've mixed it very thick, which is what I want for filling those gaps in. It just holds in there better and it works out better. You want to make sure that any gaps that you have, you pre-fill them before you tape. If you don't, you're going to have a disaster. And if you try to pre-fill that with bucket mud or something like that, one, it's going to take about 3 days to dry, and then the next problem is it's all going to crack up. If you use hot mud, it doesn't dry by the water evaporating from it, it dries from a chemical reaction, which is completely different, kind of like cement, and when it dries it doesn't crack just about no matter how thick it is. Let's get this in there. So I'll be using my smaller knife and a 6-inch knife. I just like to glob a little bit on the 6-inch knife, get it here, and then come in and push it into place. And you want to make sure that you get this as smooth as possible because there's no real back here, obviously. So when it comes time to tape, if you scrape it this wrong, you will knock it loose. It's not the end of the world. because it's just a filler. It's not structural by any means. So now that I've got that in, I'm just going to take my taping knife here, run over it, make sure that it's nice and smooth, and there we go. I'm just going to keep filling this in and we'll come back and take a look. Guys, I'm getting ready to do some taping here. I'm not going to tape the wall to the ceiling just yet. I'm going to let that 20-minute mud get a good cure on it before I cover it up. However, I am going to go ahead and tape this joint and the little joints over the door. I'm going to be using green lid bucket mud. I'm fairly fond of the green lid mud. It has more adhesive in it, and to me it's just a little bit better of a mud. And I did mix a little bit of water just with some on the top because I like it a little thicker for doing the finish work and the other stuff that I do with it. But for taping, I like it a little bit thinner. So you don't have to dilute the whole bucket. I just put like 3 tablespoons of water in there and stir it up about the top 2 inches or something like that. Just enough to tape with. So I'm not gonna get super crazy with the amount that I put on here. And of course this is a small room, so I'm struggling to get the camera where I want it and not be in the way of the camera while I'm doing this. So I am going to do this in a couple of sections just because I can't get the camera back far enough to show everything that I would like to show. So we do want to make sure that we get enough mud on here for the tape to stick to, but you don't want a ton of mud underneath the tape, but you want enough for the tape to adhere. I think this is about all the higher I'm going. So I've got some a piece of tape already cut, and we'll just get it started right down here at the bottom and run right up along the side of this outlet and right up the center, just like that. Then we'll come through with our putty knife and we'll just bury it right down in the mud. It doesn't matter if you get a little bit over the top of it. I like to take the edge of my knife and kind of go in the middle so that I press that tape down just as tight as I can get it and pull the mud out from underneath of it. You can kind of see how much I'm pulling out. And yes, it is making some little wrinkles in it, but that's okay. It'll dry up just fine. And the more mud I pull out from under it, the more the little wrinkles go away. That's what we want. I'm just going to let that dry, and it will be ready for a top coat in a few hours. I'm going to keep going here and get the rest of these done. Now that I have these seams taped, I want to go ahead and get these screws filled in. I just get me a little bit on the putty knife, and we just pack it in there and scrape it off basically so there's nothing left. And this will shrink a little bit. It is going to require a second coat to get these to where they need to be. I do like to make sure I squeeze all the air out so that there's no void in it. You'll kind of see when you put it on if there's a little spot that opens up. Just go back over it again and hit it again. Even though these are going to be covered with trim, I'm still going to go ahead and hit them for now. Kind of a prime example of a little air right there that doesn't want to leave. There it goes. So alright, I'm just going to keep filling these in. Like I say, the mud I put on there is enough to probably do every screw in this wall. So we'll get these all covered up and we'll be one step closer. Alright, I've kind of got my laundry room put back together. We even got a little echo in here now. There's still a lot more stuff that should be in here that I'm not putting back yet, just because this wall behind me is next. So let's take a look at what we got, and let's take a look at what's happening next week. I have all my joints taped, no second coats, none of that, taped all across the ceiling. A little bit wavy through here because of the fact that there was a little bit of a gap, so I'm not concerned with that. It'll dry up nice and firm, and then the mud will cover it up, what we're going to put on it. I've got all my screw holes filled. I've got my washer hooked back up. I put the trim ring on. I put one outlet cover on. I did strap my washer hose. You can kind of see it down there. So everything is hooked up there. So I'm happy with my progress, and I will obviously be finishing this room first before I finish the wall inside the kitchen that we did last time. Now we have that. Now that's where that baseboard heater used to be. I got the majority of that wire out. You can see I cut a little bit of paneling down there, but this wall needs to come apart next. That wiring needs to get fixed. I'm going to put an outlet up above it, probably right about in the center of that window, and then this wall will also get drywall on it. So that is going to be next week. Join me then and we'll get that knocked out. Alright, that's all we got for this time. If you enjoyed yourself, click on one of those two videos going to pop up below me. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider doing so. And remember to always respect the power of your power tools. We'll see you soon.